Okay, Christopher Peaks back here today with Brandon Mosley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we've got Roderick Royal here with us, who's former interim mayor and city council of Birmingham. He also served in the Army, served as a police officer, and as an educator. Roger, what's going on, man?
Wow. You got all my bio in front of you, apparently.
I mean, hey, I'm calling that from memory. There's probably some things I left off. No, Brandon, you got to watch this dude here, man. He is the consummate politician. I mean, depending on which question you ask him, he kind of reminds me of Bill Clinton because you might ask him a question one way and you might get four different answers just depending on how you get it.
Well, no, I don't know. The consummate politician is in the White House, and I don't want anybody to mistake that. Don't mistake that, all right?
My first question for you. When you were on the council, you enacted two really big things, repaving like 100 miles of the city, and then something else, too, that's really near and dear to me. Somebody spent a lot of money on dental work is getting a checkup for children. Now, you being a student of political science and politicians, would you consider yourself an old-style populist like George Wallace or some of those guys?
Well, that's really interesting that you would bring that up and even to call his name as a populist, because that's actually what he was, populist governor. And I think to a large degree, I think to a large degree I would be considered a populist, for the little guy. Yes, I think to a large degree. Now, because I'm mature enough to understand that many times in order to get whatever it is you're trying to get for the little guy, you do have to involve the big mules. And that's using the language of the populist governor that you mentioned. So, I'm not certainly opposed to working with people of resources, means, and influence. I'm not opposed to that. But certainly the priority is, for me, would be to assist. Because actually when you start talking about true government exists really to do for the individual what or do for the whole or the individual what they can't do for themselves. And that's really and truly what government exists to do. I mean, and it is what it is. And we are anyway, that's my answer. Are you there?
Who's probably not entirely aware of your bio, you were on the Birmingham City Council in the eras of, I'm drawing a blank here.
I can help you. I served when I first came in the office. I came in the sweep of government with Bernard Kincaid.
Yeah.
Mr. Kincaid was elected mayor and an entire new council. So I was a part of that council. And I think that might have been like 2001. And so that means that I served in various capacities under 3 different mayors. 4 if you include Carol Smitherman as an interim mayor. She served as interim mayor maybe about 2 weeks, or maybe 3, I guess, in fairness, because as a matter of fact, she holds the dubious distinction of being the shortest serving interim mayor in the city's history. But in either case, so it would have been Bernard Kincaid, Larry P. Langford, William Bell, and again Carroll for a few weeks, and then I myself served as interim mayor a little while.
Understood.
Roderick, we've seen the city drop to, I think, third in population now. Lost a lot of jobs like steel, banking jobs. Is there a way to bring Birmingham back?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the push is now, but during the time that I served and even before, there was a push to change the city's economic driver from, of course, steel, for the steel industry and the like, to a banking industry. And so, and from a banking industry, you had the outgrowth of technology. In fact, there is a technology corridor in downtown Birmingham. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but there is a specific area. Yeah, that's actually referred to as a technology corridor and a corridor. And then you also have the fact that the 100 and zillion pound gorilla is located in the city, which is the medical center. And it is as a matter of fact, it's the largest economic driver, I believe, in the state of Alabama.
Yeah,
and that's the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Yeah. And so that's a major thing for the city to be known as a medical center, not so much now as a banking center, but the possibility of being known as a place for technology growth outside of course, Simi Valley and those kinds of places like that. I think the Innovation Depot has a lot of good success stories in that area. And then, of course, the corridor that I just mentioned to you in downtown Birmingham, you have a lot of startups that are down there. So to answer the question in sum, yes, the city can recoup in terms of its reputation of being a city of economic importance. Now, with regard to the population, not so much. I think that we would need. Dick Arrington used to talk about living in a city. Dick Arrington being the former mayor, where you can live, work, and play. I think somewhere or another, the city still misses the mark on getting a 100 in each of those areas, and I'm not sure how we're missing the mark, but it's clear we're missing the mark because you're not growing. I mean, the city has, I think, about 210,000, and I might be being generous with the extra 10.
You're being really generous there.
Well, I said that. I said I was being but by the same token, yeah. So I mean, so how do you increase the population? Because that's what makes you the largest, okay? Population. Now, there are those who talk about annexations, but the problem with annexations, especially in the immediate Birmingham area, if you ask me, it's just my opinion, the problem is that you take on more responsibility. Sure, you get the population, but you also are having to stretch the few city dollars that you have further. And so I'm not sure if the answer is annexing smaller places in and around the city. Not to mention that they would be friendly to that, but so I'm not sure if that's the answer. So it may very well be that the truest answer is to have an influx of people because of the economic growth, the economic opportunities, those kind of things. I think that would be the way you would grow it. But at this point, I'm not real sure how we would do it outside of the areas that I just mentioned, because clearly Huntsville has a hold on the whole innovation piece in terms of technology, and principally because the Redstone Arsenal is there, and the Space Center and all of that. So I'm not real sure.
20 years ago, there was a lot of discussion around improving the Birmingham schools. And, obviously the buildings are much nicer than what they had 25 and 30 years ago. But the general perception of the quality of the schools really hasn't improved. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I think that you hit a key word, Chris, and I'm sorry, Brandon. Perception. The school system has improved. And I think that if you go back and look at the most current reports, you'll see that the school system has improved. Not by the leaps and bounds that we probably might want, but certainly in steps. And it takes steps when you are trying to turn things around. So I would disagree with you on that point. But then again, like I said, it would just be a matter of saying whose perception. and I've certainly, my youngest daughter just finished college here this past May. But if I could do it all over again, I would have no problem sending my kids, as I did, to Birmingham Public. I would have no problem with that. I think there are some gems in the system. I think all of the schools can be gems given the programs, but you have to factor in all of the other things that comes along with running the school system. You have the environment that the kids come from, the zip codes, if you would, and you have other challenges that you have to deal with. And it's not educating the kid of the 70s and 80s, which I was myself, a kid of the 70s and 80s. This is a different set of children which have newer needs. We kind of addressed the technology need, began to address it anyway, when Larry was mayor, when he did the whole thing about the computers. And he did the third world computers, but later on, the school system invested in purchasing a computer for every student. And I know that because my kids were there. And I think the program is that the computer follows the student throughout his or her matriculation through the system, particularly in high school, and at the end of the 4 years, the computer belongs to them. And I don't know how they do it now, but at that point, that's what it was. And these are not the computers that Larry introduced, the little green XO, that's what they call XO, yes. But these are actual laptops that the kids have access to. And I'm sure there have been even more improvements since then. I'm just not aware of all of the things because I'm not as close to the whole education piece as I would be if I were serving. But I would maintain as a casual observer that I think the Birmingham Public has improved and is making some strides, and we should take note of those and provide the kind of support that's needed to see it get off the ground further. And sometimes that's a mere matter of people volunteering their talents. We're talking to two very talented men here, and they have journalism programs. And I would challenge each of you to see how you could participate in maybe some special journalism piece at the school, any of those schools, to teach your craft, which obviously you're well versed at.
Let me ask you this. 4 years ago, I remember talking to Chris Woods, and he made a point that there was of a correlation between poverty and crime. And he had a plan that he wanted to introduce trade schools to the students in Birmingham. They come out of high school, they had learned one or two trades. Do you think that's something people should look at?
When I was in school, Birmingham, and this has been in the 80s, right? 70s, 80s. I graduated in 83 high school. When I was in school, there was such thing as track learning, TRACK. And the newer spelling would be TRAC, I suppose. I don't know. You know how people change things. but you had the vocational track, you had the college prep track, and those two tracks. And I was in the college prep track, but I knew others who were in the vocational track. In fact, I started out on the vocational track at Parker High. I actually took welding. That's something you didn't know about me, Chris.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I took welding because I was going, and strange thing, the teacher's name was Mr. Well Done. How about that? He was a burly old gentleman and wore glasses. That's all I can remember about him. But and how I got out of the vocational education track was I messed around there and some soot from the blowtorch got into my apron, and I just didn't want to deal with that, so I ended up in college. Now, I think what they've done now, so much for my welding, so much for my vocational training. I think what they've done now, and this was during the time I served on the council, so we're talking now in the mid-2000s, they have themed the high schools. I think Carver High School is Carver High, and they call it something like School of Sciences and whatever. And I think J.O. is the one that has vocational education, Jackson Olin High School. And I can't remember what Parker is. Oh, yes, I think Parker is like early learning. In fact, they have a separate building there on the campus of Parker where preschool and all of that is held. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
But there is a separate building, brand new, just like the school is brand new. Which brings me back to a point Brendan asked. Bricks and mortar is important, and it's good to have new brick and mortar. But along with the brick and mortar, you do have to have a solid program. So I agree with you there. But our kids, regardless as to how long it takes us to get them, at least, to kind of push to get solid programming, which I think there's been great strides toward. There's no reason why our kids should not have the very top in facilities, no matter where he or she lives, whether that's in Macon County, down there in the Black Belt, whether it's in North Alabama, Huntsville, or here in Central Alabama, Birmingham. We have to provide the best facilities available to every child. Now, and I think the correlation between crime and poverty, I've heard that. I've never seen that written, but I've heard that many, many times. But I think that it's not so much as poverty as much as environment. And there are many, many things that cause crime because, you have kids of means who get involved with crime. So, I'm not real sure if that's any special circumstance or extenuating circumstance. So I'm not sure where Chris Woods was going with that. But, we can always, and that's the thing, we can always find, sort of like the Moynihan report, you understand? You can always find reasons, that you may think something occurred. But the truth of the matter is when you get down to it, it very well may be a simple thing as providing jobs, improving the environment that people live in. And the governor actually, I'm talking about Governor Kay Ivey now, the governor actually did a great thing when she extended the whole preschool um, um, effort, if you would, to every child. I think the governor should be commended for that. And because she, being an educator, former educator herself, understands that that's when you change lives. You change lives as children begin to enter school. So she should be commended about that. And that program is available, it's my understanding, to all kids in the state of Alabama. So I give her 100 on that one.
While we have you on, we probably need to ask a little bit about this Birmingham mayor's race. You got Randall Woodfin, and he's got facing 8 challengers. I think probably the two best known are LaShonda Scales and Wanlin Gavan. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I know if I were the incumbent, the thing I would not want to happen is a forced runoff. So if I were the incumbent, that's the thing I would not want. There was a guy named Walter Johnsey. He's deceased now, the late Walter Johnsey, who was a good friend of mine and ardent supporter. And he used to always tell me, he said, Rod, now you never say never. And I think I've heard several people say, well, they don't have any money. Well, we've had 2 examples of the candidates not having money and toppling a well-funded incumbent. So if I were the incumbent, I probably would try to take them out as quickly as possible and certainly avoid runoff at all costs.
Are we looking at now, when I was looking at where some of the population shifts are at, that the Southside district is going to be the dominant one, that if you can run it up there, you can offset losses in the other districts?
I've heard that. Now, I don't know what the numbers are anymore, but actually, I believe at one point that Western box at Legion Field was a pivotal box to win. And that was during the days when Bell was mayor. So I don't know how much it has changed now. Now, if you mean to say that you have more active voters along the South Side, I would say that you probably, I have no proof of this, but you probably are correct. I think apathy has overtaken a lot of the western area and northern area of the city. Voter apathy, and there's several reasons behind that. And when you start enumerating them, you probably end up with a long list. However, if you mean to say that the activism is probably greater over there in terms of voter participation, then I agree with you 100%. But certainly that area of town will not win you the mayor's office. But it would give you a wonderful boost in that direction. I agree with you on that score.
State Representative John Rogers was, a political force in the Birmingham area. Really since I was in high school, and because of the FBI investigation and the corruption charges, he's had to step aside from politics. How big a shock was that to the community when John Rogers went down like that in that corruption investigation?
Well, that's really interesting that you say that. That was not the first time that John had been investigated. You might remember in the 90s, he was investigated in a similar fashion in a slightly different matter. Okay, slightly different. So, to be more direct in your question, I'm not so sure it was that much of a shock. One thing happens in politics, in my opinion, you can allow the position you can be so long that staying in terms of tenure that you can almost identify with the position, and you have fewer guardrails, if you would allow me to say that. And I think it's usually long-serving politicians who want to remove the guardrails or have removed the guardrails. So there could be then clearly a sincere argument for term limits. Of course, I'm not the expert on that, but if you go back, I believe that if you go back and research that, you'll probably see that most politicians that get caught up in something similar have been there a very long time. And you know, it's almost like God. When nobody's watching, he's watching. So, and he is, by the way. So I don't know. You know, that was unfortunate for him as an 80-year-old man, and for his family. And I don't have much more that I would like to say about that. I know John. We have a friendly association. We're not friends, but we do have a friendly association and have had a friendly association. And I hate that for his family. I hate that for him. The decisions he made were made by him. And certainly when you make poor decisions, you have to deal with any and all consequences. And that goes for me as well. You know, you do have to try to stay on top of your ethical game. And one of the things that I remember hearing when I served in the city government, we used to have this ethics trainer that would come and do training for us just before we would take office, the Saturday before. And they always say, or they would say then, I don't know what to do now, they would say then, if you don't want to see your name on the front page of the newspaper, don't do it. And it sounds like it sounds kind of flippant or what have you, but it's a true statement. And, you know, and I kind of agree. If you approach everything, now I don't want to talk too much about my service, but I do want to say that I always looked twice when I had sensitive matters to come before me, because there were things you want to make sure that you're clear of. And because I never wanted to, personally, I never wanted to embarrass my mom, my family, my children, my wife. You know, and I don't want, and I still don't want to embarrass them. And so, and then not to mention that I want to do, or did at the time, want to do the right thing in the interest of the public. But that's what populists do, right, Brandon?
You know, that, with John, that just that tore me up, because I've known him for, you know, almost 30 years. And he used to say, you know, I tell you, a rooster dips snuff, you can look under his wing for the can. And I never thought that was going to happen with him. So let me ask this, Rod. I remember when Langford got convicted, and he was in his press conference that day, and he said, you know, we've already got the money for that Dome Stadium. I raised your taxes. Did they already have the money? What happened to the allocation of those funds?
You know, that's an interesting question, too. Actually, the taxes that were raised, it was that penny tax, was never enough to really fund all of the projects that he wanted to do. In fact, you might remember that I was actually against the penny increase. Mm-hmm. If you go back and research that. But as it turns out, it was never really enough. And the city actually ended up using that penny increase for its operational budget. Mm. But that's been years ago. And I imagine that penny increase will sunset sometime here in the near future. I'm not real sure if it has already, but I think at that point there was a sunset on it. But you know, taxes don't sunset for real. And since the current president is no longer printing pennies, minting, M-I-N-T-E-D, no longer minting pennies, I guess it's not going to matter now, huh? It's teasing.
We can't, really talk about Birmingham without hitting on the crime topic. I mean, last year, I think Birmingham set an all-time high in number of murders, breaking records that had been set long time ago when the city was much bigger than it is now. Is there a way for government to shut down this level of violent crime, just where people get into arguments and just start shooting at each other?
That's interesting, Brandon. I don't know whether you read the latest comment out of the mayor's office. I think this was a couple of weeks ago. But a couple of weeks ago, huh?
Oh,
say again.
We had a car.
A couple of weeks.
That wasn't me.
Okay, a couple of weeks ago, it was being reported out of City Hall that homicides were down by 52%. Now, I want you to go back and look for that. So if that is the case, then the city is turning the corner. I did not try to investigate it, but I do recall reading that, and that may have been about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Now, certainly there's nothing you can do about the past, but at this point, if those numbers are true, then that means that there's a movement toward addressing it. How they've addressed it, I'm not sure. Now, I haven't been a police officer, one of those things on that long bio. I do know that high visibility is a crime-fighting tool. And so that the emphasis on hiring more police officers may have contributed some, because that means you necessarily increase the patrolling. Now, you're never going to eliminate domestic violence. I mean, that's why it's called domestic. But in terms of the other type of crimes, crimes against persons and unknown persons and those kinds of things like that, you certainly can address those. But I would ask you to go back and see what that news release was about. I think it was just 2 weeks ago where he said the homicide rate is down by 52%.
Yeah, I mean, last year was the all-time record, and we are down 52% from just insane level of violence that we saw last year.
Yes, and I think that's admirable. And because you are down, I don't see any reason to address last year. And I'm not trying to defend the current administration because I don't have any relationship with them. But I'm all about dealing with this moment, this time, in this space. And I would say if you are 52% down, let's hold it to December if you can. And then next year, that's your benchmark. Your benchmark is to take that, what would that be, 48%, and see if you can cut that in half. I don't know what the plan is, obviously, because like I said, I'm not a part of that administration, the current administration. But it's not easy to do. And now that's not even an excuse, because you do have to have, if you do have your resources, then you certainly have to make the resources work for you. You have to invest in the tools that allow for you to have a 52% drop in homicide rates. If that's cameras, it's cameras. If that's better patrol cars, it's patrol cars. If there's better equipment, it's better equipment. If there's more police officers on the street, then it's more police officers on the street. If it's community policing, the walking through the communities and then get personal engagement, then that's what it is. But I think it's actually something to celebrate, really, if in fact those numbers are correct.
Yeah, seen something the other night that showed nationwide homicides were down like 20%, assaults were down, rapes were down.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, so let me ask this, Rod. I remember a long time ago you came up under fire for saying that, which I agree with you totally on this. You said that the gay movement wasn't the same as the civil rights. Now we've seen the trans movement try to latch onto that. Do you find that insulting?
No, I just think that people who maybe make that claim are probably not as well informed as they should be, and that's not to say or delegitimize what it is that people in the LGBTQ plus area are trying to do. That's not to delegitimize it at all, as much as to say that when you make statements, you definitely have to do your research and look at what it is that you're saying. And I am for people being treated well on the job, off the job, with regard to housing, access to governmental resources. I'm for that, no matter who you are. And and I don't, I don't see sexuality as being a problem. Not at all. I don't see it as being a problem at all. I just think that when you start, you got to do your homework. That's all I think I would say. And so people who make those kinds of statements, and it's my personal opinion now, I don't think have truly studied the history and movement of Black people in this country. And if you do, then you can clearly see that there may be some differences that are worth pointing out that would give you, maybe you might arrive at the same position that I have come to, maybe. And then if you don't, that's okay. It's a free country. I also was an Army officer. And the reason why we can have freedom of speech is because guys like me and maybe even yourselves went somewhere to protect our country so that we can say whatever it is we wish within bounds. Right? Yeah, we can say whatever. I mean, so it's okay. You don't have to agree with Roderick at all. I don't have to agree with you. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. That's what we call freedom of speech. Not hate speech, but freedom of speech.
Back when Kincaid and y'all came in, originally on the council, Bernard used the Birmingham Waterworks and the water rates and dissatisfaction with the water board as a campaign issue, and that was a big thing for a number of years. And then this past year, the legislature came in and just entirely replaced the board with an entirely new board. I mean, I live out in Moody in St. Clair County, and heck, one of my neighbors is on the Birmingham Waterworks board now. Do you think the state was right to come in and do what it did, or did they go too far in directing what historically has been City of Birmingham assets?
Well, there's two things that you said there, and the first thing I'm going to say is I think the state was not needed at this point. Now, that's my answer to that. I don't think the state's action was needed. I think the state could have involved itself in an advisory kind of role and even sought to place one or two persons on the board that kind of represent the state. Now, that formula, I don't know, was ever considered or not. But I'm not real sure, but I don't think the state's involvement was needed the way that it came in. And so you have to, that's the first answer. The second thing is the city did invest all its resources into the assets of the board. But at the time of the takeover, the city was not in control of the assets, but the assets were purchased on the backs of the residents here in the city. Now, so that raises an interesting question, now doesn't it? If, in fact, it's true that, and I don't know, I think it's some 80% of the water customers actually live in Jefferson County, greater Birmingham area, then that raises an interesting question. I'm not a lawyer at all, but I think there's some questions that should be sorted out, and I don't know how you sort them out without seeing all of the information. But I do maintain that I think the state acted prematurely, and there could have been another way to get involved. Now, and let me say this: under the new board, the current or soon to be appointed board director stands to make $750,000. Did you see that in the paper?
$750,000?
Yes, a package of $750,000. That's the new board. I think that was in AL.com here this week.
That's almost college football coach money.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I'm not sure if we traded for a good thing or not. Did you hear what I said? I'm not sure if we traded it for a good thing or not. Heck, I'd love to make $750,000 a year.
I just need 1 year.
I don't know what kind of smarts you have to bring to the table to earn $750,000 a year. But if you have outside consultants and other things like that, I can't imagine why you'd pay somebody $750,000 a year. I can't, if they're not a brain surgeon. But hey, so I'm not sure the trade was so good. Now, having said that, I do think that there were some things, belt tightening, that the previous board should have done and could have done. Okay, I don't think anybody argues that. There were some operational things that could have been done. I don't think anybody argues that. But there's a way to do all of that. And I don't know. And sometimes it kind of begs for the normal Joe citizen to run things. Sometimes on these boards and things, and I'm not just talking about the water board in particular, sometimes the Joe Q citizen is the best representative. Or Josephine Q citizen. Let me just be clear on that one. Yeah. Because we make decisions sometimes when we have all this training and stuff that really isn't in the interest of the public.
Roger, in this last election, we've seen how close it was with the margins. But when we look at like Black and Hispanic voters, like in Georgia, for instance, I think
you mean the presidential election?
Mm-hmm.
The presidential election?
Yeah, like there was a 5% shift, from to Trump this time, and we've seen the Democratic Party continue to go more far to the left. Are they in danger of losing these margins? Because in close elections like this, and they're losing these margins, even if it be 3, 4, or 5%. Are they going to lose the Black vote?
Well, now, I'm going to tell you this, Chris. Now, you're asking a lay political scientist, okay? And I use the word lay very deliberately here. At the end of the day, people vote in interest groups, and they vote their interest. They vote their interest. And not everybody voting their interest have to be of the same ethnic group. So I think that the party, Democratic Party in this case, may be losing ground because it has moved away from the groups that have supported it, moved away from their interest. And that's just my opinion. And so, you have to kind of re-examine what your priorities are in terms of your platform. Do your various constituent groups support every element of your platform, and how strongly do they support it? I'm not sure if you're going to ever have a rainbow coalition, to borrow from Jesse. I'm not sure if you're going to ever have one. Because I'm not sure. Now, is it noble to try? Of course. Of course. But is it practical? Now, there is a different issue. Because I'm sure, that's not a good word. I feel relatively certain that there was a lot of crossover voting for the sitting president, because there were interests that people were voting for. Now, for instance, I'm for processed immigration. In other words, I'm for immigration, but I wanted to have a process. And there didn't seem to be a clear process with the party. Or that was the perception anyway. And the current president was able to take the high ground. And I would venture to tell you that there were a lot of people who just felt like, hey, he's right. But all he was doing is pretty much, well, I'll let that go. So I just think that, just let's remember that people vote their interest. And at least what's perceived to be their interest anyway. And I don't think it's ethnic. I don't even think it's party stuff. It boils down to the individual, because as you've heard many times, and I believe it to be true, the only poll that matters is voting day. And you get your poll from that. Mm-hmm.
Roderick, well, we have you on.
And I did not vote for our existing president.
You're not endorsing Donald Trump when you're on the podcast.
No, not at all. I'm not. No, under any circumstance. This guy is absolutely, in my opinion, unacceptable to me. In more ways than one. Now, do I think he's a decent guy? As far as I can tell, yes. But his policies are unacceptable to me. Unacceptable. Yeah, Roderick, objectionable.
While we have you on, you're not currently, in a political office. And, next year we've got like 600 seats that come up. Are you looking at possibly, one of the races, like every Alabama legislature seat is up next year?
Well, let me ask you this. If I do, can I count on your vote?
If you want to move out to St. Clair County, I don't think we're in the same district.
Do that deflect, the man answered a question with a question. What I tell you, he's a consummate politician.
Well, he's the one that said there was 600 seats. I figured out.
Well, there's 600 seats statewide, hey.
Yeah, but I figured I'd start with one vote, Chris. I'm just going to start with one vote. Isn't that how you win?
That's how you win.
Yeah, I would have started with one vote. Yeah. Well, I mean, and we will have a chance. Voters will have a chance to look at their House and their Senate races to determine what direction they want to go. And I'm not sure I'll be a part of it. One of the other things I have learned as a politician and even a good citizen, you never say no. what you do is you merely assess things as they come, and then if you have, as my friend Charlie tells me, a burning bush experience, then, or if you see the burning bush, then you go and see what it has to say to you. And so I don't know. At this point, I would just merely tell you that I think voters should get out and do what it is that they are called on to do as Americans. Get out and exercise the vote, regardless as to who's in the race. If you don't have a candidate, then write somebody's name in. Write who you think would have been a great candidate. Those names have to be counted. That's the democratic process.
Okay, let me ask you this one.
And don't write Mickey Mouse either.
Is there an office that Roger Royal may be running for next year? It may not be this House or legislative seats, but is there something on the ballot?
Is that right? I don't. At this point, at the point we're speaking, the answer is no. At this point that we're speaking. But again, like I said, you don't rule things out. Not at all. I might start ruling things out when I get older. Further along in my life, I may start ruling things out, but right now I'm not at a point where I want to rule anything out. Because I think that there may be some things that I have to offer, and there may be people out there like Brandon who may consider me.
Oh, I'd vote for you.
Hey, Brandon, I'd be really good for St. Clair. I would.
Yeah,
I'd be really good for St. Clair.
Open. Judge Hill is not running again, so that's going to be it.
Yeah, well, I'd be really good for St. Clair. Because one thing I am, as we talked about it earlier, I'm for the guy and lady who we ought be for. The people.
Are people still trying to get you to run for lieutenant governor?
Well, we've had people ask, but clearly that ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. And,
do you think Alabama will ever be a two-party state again?
Yes. Absolutely. Things ebb and flow. I mean, there was a time where the same question would have been asked about the Republicans up until the big fight between Braddock and Baxley, right?
Right.
And here comes this guy, and here comes Guy Hunt, and Emory Farmer probably went to his grave kicking himself in the rump.
Oh,
that was
did.
A very race. Yeah, right, that was a race.
He pushed George Wallace hard in '82.
Yeah, so he chose not to run that year. Oh yeah. Well, we're not gonna win anyway, and he sat at home and ran for governor. Had to run for mayor another time. I don't know. Is Emory still alive?
No, Emory's deceased.
He is deceased. Okay.
He was on the ABC board forever and a day.
I didn't know him personally, but I kept up with his.
ABC board.
I kept up with his doings in Montgomery. The mayor with the gun, right? Okay. But in either case, yeah. So in either case, I mean, like I say, he kicked himself in the butt. A whole lot probably behind that one. Then you get Guy Hunt, the Amway salesman, and then of course, then you get the Love Gov. Not in that order. Not in that order, but I mean. That's funny. And you know who really is a consummate politician who can read tea leaves? Is he still alive, Bob James, the daddy?
Yeah.
Bob is still alive. We actually had one of our columnists interview Bob. He's in a nursing home here in Montgomery, but he is still alive, and his mind is still here.
Bob's in a nursing home now?
Yeah. He was living down in Florida, but his family moved him back into Montgomery, and they placed him in a nursing home. Now he is well enough that he can go out to restaurants and things.
So he's like,
Right. So
He,
it's really just
and
a
at his age,
space.
he doesn't move around that well.
is Bobby still
Yeah.
alive?
Who?
His wife, Bobby?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't want to quote you on that one.
Man.
Well, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I would say I would love to talk to Fob one more time before he passes. I met Fob when I was 12 years old, coming back from a trip from D.C. And I used to call Fob all the way up to when he was governor.
We could probably get him on a
definitely.
podcast. We just need somebody to. I'm sure he will have some someone needs to handle the technology for him.
Yeah, he probably. I'm sure he would be a good conversation for you. And and there were people. I mean, Bob was a consummate, and we talk about consummate politicians. He knew how to read the tea leaves. Hey.
Yeah.
And isn't he the only person to be governor as both a Democrat and Republican?
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody from Reconstruction, he definitely is.
Yeah. So, and that's.
Do you remember in '98 and that runoff with him and Blunt? He first came out and said he's going to ask Arrington to endorse him, and then never said another word. And Went and Blunt courted him for 2 weeks or whatever, and then gave him the endorsement. And he sent out that flyer. It had Donald Watkins' picture on it with like an afro from the '70s, and it had Arrington and Went and Blunt. Said who will be in charge in a Blunt administration. I asked Donald Watkins about that, and all he did was laugh.
Well, politics can be
primary.
Yeah, politics can be interesting. So, and it makes you laugh. I think I was called a dark horse one time, and I was legitimately running to be elected for something. And my friends here in Birmingham, with the former coalition, they said I was a dark horse. Like what? So I mean, and even had and I am a brown guy, but they had a very dark picture. It's funny now, but I didn't think it was funny then.
Well, do you remember when Cooper did that with his pictures when he was running for mayor?
What?
He made
himself darker.
Yeah, he made himself darker because when I first met him, I was like, "Whoa, you don't look anything like you do on the pictures."
Well, I mean, hey, you have to do what you got to do. Too bad AI wasn't around then, huh? Yeah, but listen, man, gentlemen, I've enjoyed you, and I appreciate you allowing me to say a few things, and I hope I didn't bore you too bad.
No, you're an excellent guest.
Myself. Yeah, I love talking about
thank you for coming on.
My favorite thing.
Yeah, I knew you'd be a good man on here to get to tell some politics. Yeah, thanks for coming on. We kept you an hour. Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, today I am appointing Brandon Mosley as my campaign manager for St. Clair County.
As a political reporter, I cannot take sides in elections.
I mean, if you write me a check for $20,000 right now, I will take over the day-to-day operations.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
I mean, they just wrote a lot there, Christopher.
Well, who was it just wrote that paid $45,000 that house seat up there? What did that get her?
Well, I mean that got him in a runoff. Maybe he wins.
I could probably get him in the runoff.
Well, you can't get 45,000.
What, $45,000?
All right, gentlemen.
All right, Rod. It's good talking to you, buddy.
All right, thank you, guys. I appreciate the invite. Bye-bye.
Right.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. That's good.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to substitute in a picture of Roderick for the whole deal because I never did see him.
Yeah, he was using a phone.
Yeah, I wasn't seeing you either.